On May 11th, competitive cyclist Mo Wilson was shot and killed in Austin, Texas. She was in town getting ready for a big race. While she was there, she also spent some time with a fellow cyclist named Colin Strickland. Strickland went swimming with Mo on the day she was killed. The two were romantically linked, although the exact timing and nature of the relationship isn't clear. After the murder, investigators discovered evidence leading them to Colin Strickland's live-in girlfriend, Kaitlin Armstrong. Armstrong was questioned by police, but then left town. Then an arrest warrant for murder was issued for Armstrong on May 17th, and now, after more than a month on the run, Armstrong is in custody, and tonight we have all the details about her change of appearance, where she went, and how she was captured. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. The story of Kaitlin Armstrong is really a little confusing, a little unusual, and something that, you know, every time you peel back another layer of what happened here or what investigators say happened here, it gets a little more shocking. And I want to begin tonight talking about yoga. Yoga, right? I mean, I think most of us have at least taken one yoga class, or maybe you've seen one and you kind of understand everything. It's about the spiritual, the physical, and ultimately it's about calmness and discipline. And it's a way to become, I guess, someone who is more in touch with yourself, more in touch with your being, and just more at peace with the world in general. And you get a little more flexible and everything else. Yoga is great. I mean, so many people do it day in and day out, and it's sort of a way of life. And whenever I think of yoga, that's what I think of. I think of the calmness, the spirituality, the discipline, the control that you have over your emotions, your life, and everything else. It's an escape. It's a way to deal with whatever you're dealing with, whether it's physical, again, or something, you know, spiritual or mental that's going on in your life. And you can escape into yoga, and you can get recentered and you know, move on. In this case, though, the accused murderer, Kaitlin Armstrong, when she was on the run, there's a picture of her with a yoga mat. With a yoga mat. I mean, she has that connection to yoga. She's an instructor. This is a big part of her life. And to think of that, right? Someone who has taken so much time to study and practice yoga is somehow involved in a brutal murder and then goes on the lam. And this whole issue of yoga becomes very central to the search for this wanted woman, this accused murderer. And there you see her. She's at the airport. She's got the yoga mat with her. Now, on another note, let's talk about plastic surgery. Why don't we, right? Plastic surgery, like if you're going to get a nose job or a facelift, whatever you're going to get, you do it so you look better, right? Or maybe you have to do it because you're on TV, but you look better and you get noticed, right? That's really the main reason that we go to get plastic surgery, to look younger, just so, you know, people kind of like, hey, look at him, look at her. You know, you look a little better, you feel better about yourself, but your outward appearance is a little bit more noticeable. Now we take that same concept and apply it to Kaitlin Armstrong. This is what I'm talking about. She apparently had some plastic surgery, maybe a little nose job. You can see the before and after. And the whole point for her was not to necessarily look better, and she may look better or worse, I know that's up to you to figure out, but to look different and not get noticed. Her world is so different. Every aspect of it is you know, the opposite of what you would think it would be. Getting plastic surgery so nobody notices you. Getting plastic surgery so you look different, because, you know, you look at the before picture, she looks fine. You look at the after picture, she still looks fine, but she looks much different than she did in the before. And apparently that's part of what happened as Kaitlin Armstrong, after being questioned by police, took off and was on the lam for more than a month. One of the things she did, changed her appearance a little bit. Now, Anne Mercogliana is a reporter for Inside Edition, and she had an opportunity to speak with some folks down in Costa Rica where Kaitlin Armstrong was found. Apparently she was staying at a hostel. It was like a yoga hostel, and the man she spoke with, Zachary Paulson, is a friend of the owner of where Kaitlin Armstrong was staying while she was wanted as a fugitive for murder. We spoke with Anne today and have a lot more information, a lot more details about what Kaitlin Armstrong was doing and how she got captured.
When we learned that Kaitlin Armstrong had been arrested in Costa Rica, we started calling around. We have a producer who, very tenacious, he started calling all of the hostels in Costa Rica, asking questions. And, you know, one person, one employee at Don John's said, yes, you know, we had an arrest here yesterday. And our producer said, great, let's get this on camera. So we quickly set up an interview with a friend of the owner. And while we were chatting with this friend, Zachary, we asked him, did she leave anything behind? And he said, you know, matter of fact, yes, she left behind 2 passports. Do you want to see them? So we said, sure. And he took out these 2 passports. One had Kaitlin's name, one had her sister, Christine. And then he said, we also have a receipt. Do you want to see the receipt? Sure. So Zachary pulled out a receipt for $6,350, and it was for what looked like a cosmetic surgery center. So we asked him about that. He told us that Kaitlin actually had a bandage on her nose, and he noticed it, and he asked her about it. He saw the blood inside her nostrils, and she was explaining it as a surfing injury. And he said, you know, something wasn't quite right about that story, even though he didn't know who she really was. He just thought it was an odd explanation, the way the injury looked, the bandage, and now we see what she looks like, and, you know, people do believe her nose looks much more narrow. We know she has brown hair, and we know she's finally back in custody. So we know from the U.S. Marshals she was taken into custody June 29th at this hostel. We know Zachary Paulson had been staying there since September. And he spent some time with her there. He told us that she was actually doing yoga classes there for room and board, and that she had complained to some people there about having money troubles. He also showed us the exact spot where she was arrested, sort of an outdoor lobby. And Zachary described when she was arrested. He showed us where she was arrested in this outdoor lobby space. A beautiful hostel, by the way. A lot of surfers go there. He told us that celebrities have passed through there. When she was arrested, she told police she had no documents. She kept telling police she had no documents. And in fact, she did have documents, and she left them behind in this locked box in her room. And we got a chance to see her room as well, and her communal bathroom, and, you know, quite a beautiful hostel she was staying at, and definitely a place where you could get lost. She really blended in at this hostel, but Zachary did tell us that the owner's mother actually had suspicions about her. When she was taken into custody by local authorities, she was freaked out. It was described to us, but she didn't seem to put up any resistance, it didn't seem, from what we were told. Our witness didn't know who Kaitlin was until after the arrest. While she was there, he noted that her injury on her face, her nose, the bandage, the bleeding, didn't really add up to her story that she had some kind of a surfing accident. That raised eyebrows. We asked, did anybody have any suspicions about her? Did she act suspiciously while she was there? And he said, you know, the owner's mom was suspicious about her. Something just didn't sit well with her, but otherwise it seems like she just blended in and got lost. In addition to leaving passports, they showed us her COVID vaccination card was also left. Also, they said she left a Social Security card, and they also showed us a credit card. So she left quite a few things, and it is interesting that they weren't taken when she was arrested. The The owner's friend told us that when she checked in, she didn't have to provide any identification, and she went by the name of Ari, during her time there. It's a really beautiful place, really laid back. You could see all these surfboards hanging around, these surfers. There was a whole yoga studio, and Zachary, the owner's friend, told us this is where Kaitlin does her yoga. She was teaching classes in order to have room and board to stay there. Probably like any hostel, it's a lot of people coming and going. They mentioned that celebrities pass through. You know, definitely a good place to fly under the radar. She's back in Austin, and she'll be facing this murder charge now after a long journey on the run.
Again, our thanks to Inside Edition and Mercogliano for all that information, that reporting. Unbelievable developments in this case. Let me bring in special guest joining us tonight in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jason Jensen, who's been covering this story from the beginning for us, and I believe was the first one who said, hey, maybe, just maybe, she's using her sister's identity. And lo and behold, Jason, what do they find at the hostel? What did she leave behind? A passport with her sister's name on it.
Right. Yeah, Vinnie. We first announced that on the show on the 14th of June. So, yeah, we've been right on this, that from the beginning that she was likely traveling under the name of Kaitlin Armstrong. So she either borrowed the passport or stole it from her sister. So it'll be interesting to find out from, you know, the Marshal Service what the situation was surrounding how she obtained that ID. Yeah,
if she got it and her sister was cooperating, that's a problem for her sister Christine. But we'll see how that all develops. What are your thoughts? So how surprised are you about where they found her? In Costa Rica at a yoga surfing hostel. I've never heard of that, but apparently they're relatively popular down there.
Right, yeah. It's kind of a mixed, situation, her being found there. On one hand, it's no surprise that she did not completely leave her roots. She's a yoga instructor and went to an area that, or a place that would really feature that kind of service and offered herself there for employment. The really surprise was she did the opposite of what everyone suspected. People were claiming that she likely ran to Canada because it was close to her roots in Michigan. So the opposite of Canada would be down in the tropical areas like that, like Costa Rica, Belize, and so on. So that was a really surprise to us all.
Absolutely. Now, we're looking at some pictures of her and clearly changing her appearance. We heard that she had the bandage on the nose. I'm looking at that nose. It's a different nose. It really changes her look to a degree. And she obviously changed the hair as well. I mean, if I was looking at the picture on the left, the before, and I saw her on the right, I would not recognize her. There's no way I'd recognize her.
You're right, Vinnie. I mean, there's such a drastic change that she underwent in 43 days. Clearly, what she had, the procedure she had is known as an alar base reduction. That's where you reduce the size of the flares of your nostrils. So that procedure usually takes 7 to 10 days to heal from. So as you can see from her booking photo, there's no sign of a scar or fresh injuries. So yeah, she had enough time to be on the run that she did all this creative changes to herself, her nose. She looks like she's got some lip filler, and she changed her hair, the length of her hair and her color.
Yeah, I mean, completely, and obviously she's not smiling here in the booking photos for obvious reasons, but still, drastic change, but she couldn't shed the yoga mat. I mean, that was it. It was the yoga mat. She just seemed connected to it. And like, if you are wanted for murder, right, and you are on the run, I mean, it would seem to me common sense would be to run away from everything that you know, everything that's been a part of your life, that's connected to your life, but she just couldn't leave the yoga mat alone.
Right, clearly that's her passion. She would have been better off to completely reinvent herself, be a waitress in Iowa or something before sticking with her yoga roots, because clearly from what we've heard from Deputy Marshal Fila is they were looking for her doing yoga retreats and yoga employment while down there in Costa Rica. So her habits eventually is what revealed herself.
Well, the good news is, right, when you're in a cell, if you're locked out by yourself or with someone, you can do your yoga. I mean, she can still continue to do yoga. She may not have a yoga mat, might be a hard surface, but she can still do her yoga to prepare for whatever's next for her. Interesting other thing, she went by the name Ari apparently, and was bartering for the room and board rather than paying for it. She was kind of working for it. So I'll do the classes, you let me stay here.
Right, yeah, she's hoping to extend the money she got from the sale of her Jeep or whatever cash she had on hand as far as it would go on, because she certainly wouldn't be able to establish employment or something where she's going to have to identify herself, provide identification, and establish herself, because eventually her name would pop up, whether it be on Interpol or something like that.
And how about the owner's mother had a little... Mother's intuition is something, isn't it, Jason? It's almost like a private investigator's intuition. That something's just not right here. Wasn't sitting right with her. Someone sort of floats into town and, you know, no one just, I guess people can float into town, but she didn't come from that life. So I don't think she would have that aura of being sort of a drifter in her life, because she's never really been that.
Right, right. I think she was probably not fitting the stereotype that she was trying to portray she was part of.
Yeah, I am shocked. I really thought she was going to be, as you said, up north, but she did actually apparently take that ride when she went to the airport, Liberty Airport in Newark, New Jersey, and ended up in Costa Rica. So thinking about how she was able to do this, and allude, how would you evaluate the job that was done by the marshals? Because you look at it, you start off, it's a needle in a haystack, right? It's a needle. You could go, she had the lead time, she could go pretty much anywhere in the world. But do you think the fact that she apparently used the sister's name, like you said, they must have been tracking that to at least have some idea of where in the world she could be?
Right. Once they learned that she was traveling under the name of Kaitlin Armstrong is what tipped them off to the flight from Newark to Costa Rica. And then at that point, they just had to contact and cooperate with the Costa Rican authorities. But until that moment, she almost had the perfect getaway, because she was working with cash only. She had no digital footprints at all. You know, it's real easy. If you can release yourself from the digital environment, phones, laptops, and the like, then you can really fall off the modern 21st century grid, because everybody's so used to those devices and amenities that cash on hand, you know, it's almost a rarity now that you can go to somebody and pay with cash. Because, like, for instance, during COVID, everybody was interested in just card transaction.
Absolutely. All right, Jason Jensen, private investigator, staying with us. When we come back, we've got more to talk about here in the saga of Kaitlin Armstrong, who is now in custody and in Austin, Texas tonight. Also, coming up next hour. In Dodgeville, Wisconsin, Sean Pickett has been charged with the brutal murder of his mother and for killing her dog. But the defendant has allegedly claimed several different defenses. Which one is most viable? He was framed by her boyfriend. He was possessed with evil and blacked out. Or he killed in self-defense. We break it all down with our think tank.
Did Mr. Pickett complain of any injuries to his own body?
No.
Did you observe any fresh or significant injuries on Mr. Pickett's body?
No, I did not. was a 43-day effort that was initiated here by the U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force, where then was elevated to a major case that went back to our headquarters, where we were provided with additional resources, funding, all those types of special investigators that really have a specialized role in something, and then eventually got our Costa Rican officials involved once we knew she fled to that country. Once we had the information and validated that she had landed there in Costa Rica, we also got some quick real-time information that she took some transportation to a specific area, and those officials there in Costa Rica were able to assist us. And we knew by her pattern that she was probably going to be frequenting some type of yoga studios within a specific area. And really, it was boots on the ground and interviewing. And, you know, we were kind of I feel like the Costa Ricans were right behind Kaitlin at times. And then finally, you know, we're able to, get her there at that hostel hotel.
Unbelievable story. Kaitlin Armstrong was involved in a love triangle, according to investigators, and murdered a woman who was involved with her boyfriend. Then she went on the run. And we go back to that picture. She's at the airport. She's got a yoga mat with her. Like, what sort of fugitive escapes and is running around with a yoga mat? Someone who you're going to get and find and capture at a surfing yoga hostel in Costa Rica. Unbelievable development. Still with us tonight, private investigator Jason Jensen, and joining us now in Los Angeles, California, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon, and in Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander and host of the incredible Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King, is with us. Great to see everyone tonight. Bobby, you're in L.A. You ever traveled down to Costa Rica for a little weekend at the yoga surfing hostel? Do a little surfing, a little yoga?
Are you going to laugh when I tell you I did? In fact, do just that. My wife is into yoga, and we went down to a surf camp that was owned by two brothers, American brothers, down in Nosara, Costa Rica, and Malpais, Costa Rica. And I spent a week at each place doing yoga and surfing. That's where I learned to surf.
Of course he did. You know, I just throw that at him, like out of left field. And the answer is, of course I did. Wow. Okay. So you've been down in that area. So when you've got Brandon Fielder from the U.S. Marshal's Office saying, yeah, we kind of knew where she went because she was using her sister's name, just like Jason Jensen said, and they had the general area. They know she's into yoga. How difficult of a task was it, do you think, from that point forward, Bobby?
Well, I don't think it was a difficult task. It might have been a time-consuming task, from my understanding, that you go to every yoga studio and you ask for a roster of their people, their clients or their instructors, and you start looking at names and see if any of her aliases pop up or her actual name. So you just start looking at sign-in sheets and things like that, because a lot of these instructors are paid by how many students are in their class. So they have to have a sign-in sheet to determine how many students are in that class. So you start looking at the sign-in sheets, you start looking at the instructor names, and it could take you a while in a place like that has so many of these yoga studios. But it wouldn't be a difficult task. It might be time-consuming, and like you heard the marshal said, they would, the Costa Rican authorities might have been a step behind her here and there, but they were certainly on her trail for a little while.
All right, Mike King, let's go. Let me go through the timeline here on where she was at different points. We begin May 13th. Kaitlin Armstrong sells her 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee at the South Austin, Texas CarMax, right? You bring it to CarMax, they give you a check. You walk away, you got money. About $11,000, $12,000 she got. May 14th, she goes to Austin International Bergstrom Airport, boards a flight to Houston. So she goes from Austin to Houston. Then, again, May 14th, lands in Houston and makes a connecting flight to New York's LaGuardia Airport. And that's what threw me off in this whole thing. I was thinking maybe just hide in the city with 8 million other people, but no. May 18th, Armstrong was dropped off at Newark Liberty International Airport. That is in New Jersey, across the river. And then on the 18th, apparently she landed in San Jose. Not San Jose, California, but she apparently knew the way to San Jose, Costa Rica. And on June 29th, arrested at a hostel on Santa Teresa Beach. And when they arrested her, Mike King, after this tracking all these movements they're able to track, she looks, I think, a lot different. I mean, looks a lot different, and apparently using the name Ari. What are your thoughts, Mike, on this whole job that was done by the marshals with the help of the folks from Costa Rica?
It's really interesting when we go back and look at the very start of this thing. If this was someone who was not guilty or feeling guilty, why on earth dump the car so quickly? Why on earth make these roundabout pathways? Once she lands in New Jersey, we know that she also is seen taking a vehicle up to the campground, same campground where her sister happens to work, and then makes her way back to Newark. And if I'm catching the timeline correct, Vinny, she actually jumps on a plane from Newark, takes a quick stop at LaGuardia, and then heads down. When I looked online, the only plane I could find that did that route was Spirit Airline, discount airline, where obviously she's concerned about saving money, but she's putting these things in order, these things to kind of throw us off the track. We got people thinking, I wonder if she's going to Canada. And what she does is she does the 180, and she heads south and heads across the border. She can't do that without a passport, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that passport. Was it given or was it stolen? And there's got a lot of splaining that needs to be done on that one. But then she gets down there, jumps a car, takes a car over to the beach where she's finally captured. But like you were saying, this changing the identity, I mean, it's pretty tough when we look at photographs. The angles are a little bit different in the pictures, but I have to agree, it is so compelling, $6,300 to a plastic surgeon, and clearly there's some differences there. There does look like there's some Botox in the lips to kind of change things. Without a smile, it's a completely different looking person anyway. But all these things are pointing to someone who's trying to get under the radar and stay completely away from what eventually happened, and that is the long arm of the law finally catching up.
Yeah, Jason Jensen, I thought for sure, New York City. New York City, you can walk around with a mask everywhere and you'll blend in and nobody will see your face. And if she cut, she had that long flowing hair, you cut the hair, you put a mask on, who's gonna recognize her anywhere? No one. Who's gonna pay attention to her? No one.
Right, Vinny. That standing by itself would have been a pretty smart move, but the difference is the cost of living between New York City and Costa Rica are completely different, where she can extend her money down in Costa Rica almost tenfold. So that seemed to be the smart move going down there, is to try and make that money that she got from the sale of the Jeep or whatever she had on hand last as long as possible.
Yeah, so Bobby, Mike brought up a great point about the family. Did she get help in all this? And I don't know if she did, but she had possession, allegedly, of her sister's passport. That is big time trouble.
Yeah, especially, helping a murderer escape, after the fact is like you said, big trouble. So I'm sure they've already interviewed the sister pretty hard, and they're looking at the facts of that. She's probably not going to give up her sister. She's probably going to say she stole it from her sister. She's probably going to try to cover for her sister, I would imagine. And so, yeah, it might be a tough case to make. Because there's only two people involved, the two sisters, and they know exactly what happened and how she got it. So if they concoct a story and they may have done it already, she may have said, just say I stole it from you. Then the question becomes, why didn't you report it stolen? Did your sister come and see you? Things like that. But yeah, it could be, harboring a murder fugitive, is trouble, and it's problematic for the sister right now.
I am still looking at these pictures, and to me, drastic differences, but not enough to stop the Costa Rican authorities from finding her. I mean, they tracked her down, regardless of how different she looked. Jason Jensen, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much, sir. Bobby Chico and Mike King staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the underlying case. Why were they chasing her? We're going to dive a little deeper into the tragic, tragic murder of Mo Wilson.
Oh.
Nice work, guys. Come on.
These cyclists working their way up the hill are participating in Gravel Locos, a 150-mile gravel bike ride located 2 hours outside of Austin, is where Anna Mariah Wilson was headed on May 14th.
After just 2 seasons, she rose to the top of both mountain and gravel racing in the nation.
She had kind of just started being at the top level, and at 25 years old, for sure, her career was just getting started.
But that promising future was cut short. Mariah Wilson was found shot to death a few days before that race.
on May 11, 2022. Mariah passed away in Austin, Texas, while she prepared to compete in the Gravel Locos bike race.
Now cyclists have gathered to remember the rising star, holding a short ride in her honor. According to court documents, officers responded to a residence where Wilson was observed lying on the bathroom floor, covered in blood. She was later pronounced dead. Investigators think she may have been the victim of a jealous rival. Wilson had dated pro cyclist Colin Strickland, who, according to Wilson's friend, had an on-again, off-again relationship with another cyclist, Kaitlin Armstrong. Police reports state that Armstrong had discovered Strickland was having a romantic relationship with Wilson, even though Armstrong and Strickland were still dating. Armstrong was so angry, Armstrong wanted to kill Wilson. Strickland, in a statement to an Austin American-Statesman reporter, said he only dated Wilson a week or so before he and Kaitlin reconciled their relationship, though he says he continued to see Mo at cycling events and in public settings. Armstrong, who was interviewed by police, rolled her eyes in an angry manner at this. On the day of Wilson's death, Strickland confirmed they were together swimming at a local pool and later grabbed a bite to eat. Armstrong, on the other hand, was not seen with Wilson that day, but the car she drives, a 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee, was captured on surveillance footage at the house where Wilson was staying. In her police interview, Armstrong made no effort to deny this and provided no explanation as to why her vehicle was there. Partway through this interview, Armstrong requested to leave and was allowed to do so. The suggestion that Wilson may have been part of a love triangle prompted the family to state that she was not in a relationship at the time of her death. But that has not stopped investigators from charging Armstrong with first-degree murder.
We're here today to say that the violence that took the life of Mo was not okay, and we are not okay.
So the alleged motive here, obvious, right? It is jealousy, it is rage by Kaitlin Armstrong towards Mo Wilson. That's the allegation. Still with us, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon, retired police commander and host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. And joining us now in New York City, psychotherapist, host of Talking Live on Facebook Watch and the Bite Side podcast, Dr. Robbie Ludwig is with us. Dr. Robbie, let me ask you this. This is the part of this case, again, I don't understand. She's a yoga instructor. Yoga is her life. Isn't that about discipline, calmness, wellness? Yet there's this allegation of this raging jealousy that motivated her to commit murder. How do we reconcile all of this?
The yoga clearly was not working for her. Kaitlin clearly had an issue with rage and also feeling like she had ownership over her boyfriend. And what I call this is an abandonment killer. Kaitlin felt like her boyfriend was abandoning her, and that was not okay. And basically, these types of individuals see things in a very black and white way. And they think if they get rid of the lover, then they can have their boyfriend back, or they see it as punishment to both the boyfriend and the lover for interfering with Kaitlin's life and well-being. So it doesn't matter what actually happens. It matters how Kaitlin perceived the relationship.
And Mike, I think about some of the evidence in this case pointing towards Kaitlin Armstrong, some strong evidence, and she seemingly had no explanation as to why her car was there at the time of the murder.
Yeah, she doesn't confess to anything, but she gives an interesting behavioral admission when she kind of nods and says, yeah, I think you're right. This would be really hard to explain. And then, of course, how do you get past the evidence of immediately dumping the car, immediately heading out of town? I was thinking earlier, you know, if she ran to New York to get to the border, or just because she has a family member up there, she's still pretty darn good on her feet, because she comes up with this scheme to go exactly the opposite direction and head down into South America. And by doing that, she throws a curveball that maybe people weren't expecting. And yet I think we know pretty quickly, the police were saying, hey, we think she made it to LaGuardia, and now we get this confirmation. I think they were on top of that idea that she might be using someone else's ID from the get-go.
Bobby Chacon, what's the difference between chasing someone like this, who obviously not a career criminal, right? In tracking down the evidence and what they leave behind versus, you know, maybe someone who's in more of an organized type of operation, whether it's drug dealing or the mob or something like that. Because from my perspective, this is like the amateur criminal.
Yeah, Vinny, you know, I was personally involved in the hunt for Eric Rudolph in the mountains of North Carolina. And he had told people for years that he was going to go up in those mountains and hide from the feds. He had planned it. He had buried supplies in 5-gallon buckets, freeze-dried fruits and canned stuff. And he had matches in each of these things. And he hid them all over the mountains up there. And as you know, he was able to elude in a small area, but a very dense forest for 2 years, and was only caught because he ran out of food, came down into town and was arrested by a sharp uniformed officer, found him rifling through a dumpster. So you have people that did, you know, like a Rudolph who planned it. This was a crime that I don't think she planned. I think she flew into a jealous rage and she just committed this crime on the spur of the moment and then had to sell her car. All of these obvious things we're talking about because she didn't have time to plan it so that it would look like normal activity. All of this makes her look, as Mike said, makes her look guilty because she didn't have the time to plan it. Now, that's not to say it wasn't premeditated. She took that weapon out of her house. She drove over to that girl's house where she knew she was staying, and she murdered her. That's premeditation. But it wasn't planned out that long in advance. And so the things we're talking about now are a result of her not planning out, you know, this crime, because I think she realized her boyfriend was spending time with the ex-girlfriend that day. He made some excuse that his phone battery was dying. You know, that's like the oldest excuse in the book. And it pushed her into this rage, and she didn't have a lot of time to plan.
Bobby Chacon, Mike King, great to see you. Great to have you on the show tonight. Dr. Robbie Ludwig's going to stay with us. When we come back, I have a big question for Dr. Robbie Ludwig about why would she allegedly go after the girlfriend and not her own boyfriend when she was acting out allegedly in this jealous rage. Also, coming up next hour. In Green Bay, Wisconsin, Taylor Shabusiness is accused of having sex with a man, severing his head, and leaving it in a bucket in his mother's basement. After a competency evaluation, Shabusiness was back in court. We have the details.
But how about a trial starting on October 24th? Mr. Jolly, does that work?
That works.
That is Colin Strickland, the man in the middle of this love triangle. Kaitlin Armstrong was his live-in girlfriend. Mo Wilson was someone that he had some sort of a relationship with. And she's the one who allegedly was shot and killed by Kaitlin Armstrong. So Strickland told police that he did have a romantic relationship with Mo Wilson, Anna Mariah Wilson. They call her Mo Wilson. For 2 weeks in October while he was on a break. He was on a break with Kaitlin Armstrong. That was his story to police. Let me read from the affidavit so you get a better idea of some of the alleged facts in this case. Jane, this is someone who gave a tip. Jane advised Wilson and Strickland have had multiple romantic relationships together and described it as an on-again, off-again relationship. Jane, again, the anonymous caller, stated Wilson's and Strickland's romantic relationship started during Wilson's first trip to Austin, Texas in the fall of 2021. Jane advised Armstrong discovered Wilson's phone number and contacted Wilson several times. Jane advised the last time Armstrong called Wilson, she told Wilson she was with Strickland and Wilson needed to stay away from him. Then another caller who refused to be identified but advised that she was with Armstrong in January of 22. The caller advised Armstrong just discovered Strickland was having a romantic relationship. Strickland was with Wilson, even though Armstrong and Strickland were still dating. The caller advised Armstrong became furious and was shaking in anger. Armstrong told the caller Armstrong was so angry, Armstrong wanted to kill Wilson. Armstrong proceeded to tell the caller that Armstrong had either recently purchased a firearm or was going to. Dr. Robbie Ludwig still with us. Why, in this case, again, if these allegations are true, she's presumed innocent, they've got to prove it all, just allegations at this point. But if they are in a love triangle situation, why would someone go after the other woman, for lack of a better word here, they weren't married, but the other woman, as opposed to going after your own boyfriend who was the one who was lying and allegedly cheating on you?
Yes, it seems not to make sense, but Kaitlin, like many of these abandonment killers, they blame the lover. They blame the extramarital person for their relationship's demise. And so in their mind, they feel if they get rid of the lover, then they can resume having the romantic and loving relationship that they had previously. And Kaitlin didn't want to kill off Colin because she loved him and she probably had fantasies that they could still be together and have a strong relationship. She just needed to manage getting rid of the woman who was interfering with their perfect romance and relationship. And we know this is probably so far from the truth. I'm sure Kaitlin and Colin had a very difficult relationship because women like Kaitlin often stalk, are very possessive, are high drama, and it's hard for them to feel secure. And very often they're very suffocating in relationships as well.
And what are your thoughts about Colin? I mean, apparently telling police it was, we were on a break and we had this brief thing and then we were just friends, versus the tipsters who were calling in saying, no, this was an on-again, off-again relationship.
Well, it sounds like Colin was used to fibbing a bit about his relationships, and I'm sure he felt and feels very guilty about what happened to Mo. This was nothing he ever imagined or ever wanted. He's a young guy. He's allowed to date as many women as he wants, and he probably felt restricted in a way that he was not able to get out of. So this is just really tragic for everyone involved. And, you know, Kaitlin, basically, if she is found guilty, if she allegedly did commit this crime, it's really sad because her issues basically ruined her life. She could have had a good life if she was mentally stable, but clearly did not have the wherewithal to manage these kinds of upsetting but normal conflicts that happen when in
Every day,
relationships.
happen every day, and the yoga should have helped it. Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Health. Go to pumpkin.care.
In Dodgeville, Wisconsin, Sean Pickett has been charged with the brutal murder of his mother and for killing her dog. But the defendant has allegedly claimed several different defenses. Which one is most viable? He was framed by her boyfriend. He was possessed with evil and blacked out. Or he killed in self-defense. We break it all down with our think tank.
Did Mr. Pickett complain of any injuries to his own body?
No.
Did you observe any fresh or significant injuries on Mr. Pickett's body?
No, I did not.
In Green Bay, Wisconsin, Taylor Shabusiness is accused of having sex with a man, severing his head, and leaving it in a bucket in his mother's basement. After a competency evaluation, Shabusiness was back in court. We have the details.
But how about a trial starting on October 24? Mr. Jolly, does that work?
That works.
On the docket tonight in Las Vegas, Nevada, a big hearing in the Playboy model murder trial. Kelsey Turner, accused of murdering her sugar daddy doctor. Prosecutors have cut a deal with Kelsey's boyfriend, and tonight we have the latest from Vegas.
He says, seems that Kelsey's having some trouble with her boyfriend out there in Vegas. He's hitting her, he's abusing her, and she has no money, nowhere to go.
Plus, Amber Heard looking for a new trial and claiming one of the jurors was not who he said he was. Tonight's 13th juror question: if she wins a new trial, what would a retrial of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard be like? Get ready. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. Vinnie Politan, thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And we have big news tonight out of Las Vegas, Nevada, in the Playboy model murder trial. This is one we've been tracking for quite some time here on Closing Arguments. And it all began, there were 3 defendants, then there were 2 defendants, and now there is just one. Kelsey Turner left alone now. Her boyfriend has apparently cut a deal. Their roommate apparently cut a deal. So we've got a lot to get to because her boyfriend today spoke with Court TV. We're going to play that for you in just a moment. Spoke with Court TV from behind bars, by the way. Let's begin, though, with what happened in court today. Kelsey Turner, like I said, we've been tracking this one for quite some time. We thought it was going to happen right around the time that COVID hit. Everything got delayed, but now a lot has changed in the way this case is shaping up. Let's take a look at what happened in court today.
Turner, we're anticipating a couple of weeks. That's why we were headed toward the earlier part of November, if possible. Maybe the 14th.
The last week in the staff is 11/7. Does that work for the parties?
11/7's fine.
I'm okay if it goes over to the other staff. I just want to start with this.
Sure.
The outside staff.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll do a jury trial of 11/7/22 with a calendar call of 10/31/22.
It's back on the calendar, folks, and that's good news because it's been a long time. Kelsey Turner is the defendant. You don't remember what she looks like? Let me show you. Former Playboy model, also Maxim magazine. She was living quite the life. Here she is when she was first arrested and was carrying a child apparently at the time, did give birth to that child. The victim in the case, her alleged sugar daddy doctor from California, Dr. Thomas Burchard. There he is. Allegations that she had gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars from the doctor. And the doctor left home in California, went out to Vegas, and that's where he ended up dead in the trunk of her car in the desert. Now, let's get to the latest. Joining me now by phone in Las Vegas, Nevada, Court TV Senior Director of Courtroom Coverage, Grace Wong, joins us by phone. Grace, great to speak with you tonight from Vegas. Give us some of the details of the plea agreement that Kelsey Turner's boyfriend, Kennison, got.
Hi, Vinnie. It's great to be with you again. So her boyfriend, John Logan Kennison, pleaded guilty to the same charges that he was facing along with Kelsey Turner. That was conspiracy to commit murder and second-degree murder with a deadly weapon. He acknowledged his part and pleaded guilty. The murder charge is a second-degree murder charge, and he's agreed to serve prison time. So he faces 2 to 10 years for the conspiracy and a minimum of 10 and a few years that will have to be tacked on to the 10 before he becomes eligible for parole for using a deadly weapon. So it seems like a pretty good deal if he does. You know, he's still a young man, And if this plea agreement goes through, then he should be out, you know, on good behavior. He could be out and still have a good life.
That amazes me, Grace. Every time, you know, we cover cases around the country, and I understand sometimes to get the person you believe is most culpable, you've got to cut deals, but that is a sweet deal for this brutal bludgeoning. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, Dr. Burchard was found in the trunk of the car. All right, so how does that car get to where it is? Who was driving that car?
Well, that was one of the things that I found interesting. He, when I spoke to John, he wouldn't admit to any of the details of the alleged crime. He wouldn't admit to even being there that night. And I kept asking him, well, then why did you plead guilty? What, you know, did you kill him? And he avoided the question. So I finally said, well, who drove the car? And this is what he had to say. And of course, driving the car is basically driving the body of the victim to where they had abandoned his body. So I wanted to know what he had to say about that.
So who drove the car? Who drove the car out? Were you there, John, when because they found the body in the car, right? About 40 minutes outside of Las Vegas. Who drove that car? It was Kelsey's car. Did she drive it?
No, I don't know. I don't know who drove it.
Did you drive it?
No.
And how did he end up dead?
I don't know. It's stuff that I can't talk about till after I've been sentenced and stuff like that.
So what do you want us to know about what happened? You were there, right?
I don't really have anything for you to really know about what happened because I don't know what happened like that. I don't have that information for you right now.
I don't know what happened? Grace, you know, it's been a while since I've been a prosecutor, but I'm not cutting a deal with somebody to get up on the witness stand and say, I don't know what happened.
Exactly. And I did, you know, he seems to say, you know, that he wants to talk more after his sentencing, which is set for the end of July sometime. But what I was also interested in was, well, is he, you know, why is he pleading guilty then if he won't admit to, I mean, by pleading guilty, you admit that you did it. That
yes, you have to put that on the
crime.
record. You know, and most judges make you put a factual basis, so you actually say what you did. You don't just say, I plead guilty. What did you do? You know, I bludgeoned him. I killed him. I put him in the trunk. I did something. Wow, what's going on here?
Well, I think it might have something to do with his love for Kelsey Turner. He is still very connected to her. He showed me his, shortly after they started dating, they each got tattoos of their names tattooed on their arms, and he showed me his tattoo of Kelsey on the inside of his elbow, which is really quite large. And he wanted me to know that she was a good mother, and I wanted, and a good person. He wanted me to know that both of them were good people, and that somehow things had just got messed up, in his words, that night. So I asked him then how he would feel. Now, we have 3 people that are charged in the murder. One person has flipped and has gotten herself a deal. She is going to get probation, and she is out of custody until she needs to testify. So that's Diana Pena. And then we have him, who's pled guilty. And now we have Kelsey Turner, who's the last woman standing, so to speak. And I wanted to know how he would feel if, after pleading guilty and taking responsibility for this crime, in a sense, if she got away with the alleged murder. So let's have a listen to what he had to say about that.
So you've pled guilty, but she hasn't. We don't know yet. There has been a trial date set today. Her trial's going to be November 7th. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. Hopefully she can go home.
So what if she's acquitted? What if she gets off? How are you going to feel? Are you going to feel like you took the fall for her?
No. No, I won't.
So you.
I'll be. At least somebody got something decent. I hope she goes home so she can go be with the kids. You know what I'm saying? She's got 2 other kids too, so she deserves to be around them. They deserve to have her in their life. So.
Wow, Grace, sounds like he's. I mean, is it a deal that he got? Like, do we? This is confusing me, Grace, because it sounds like he wants her to walk home and be there with the kids, which is understandable if you didn't like cut a deal with prosecutors, unless you just pleaded guilty and said, I did it.
Well, he might say he did it during the sentencing, but he wouldn't say that to me. He wouldn't admit that to me. He avoided all the questions that I had for him about what happened that night and what he did and what he's pleading guilty to. But he does give her a very potent defense if you think about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she is going to say probably that he did it, and he admits he did it, and that she might have been too scared to do anything to avoid what happened, and it happened so fast. So she might very well, get away with something much less than murder if this plays out the way the defense for Turner and for Kennison.
This is a fascinating development in the case. I did not expect this, but Grace Wong on top of all of it. And we're going to play more of that interview a little bit now, but we're going to play a little bit more of it in the future as well. Grace Wong out in Las Vegas tonight. Thank you so much. I know you got to go. You got tickets to Wayne Newton tonight. I don't want you to be late.
Okay. Thank you, Vinny.
All right. Let's bring in our think tank. What do they have to say about all that? Joining us tonight in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney, former federal prosecutor, law professor at Texas Southern University. Michael Sterling is with us. In Seattle, Washington, trial attorney Ann Bremner. And in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, former prosecutor, former assistant state attorney, counsel for Ben Crump Law, and trial attorney Sue Ann Robinson. Great to see everyone. Michael Sterling, this is a confusing situation, but I think it's all good news for Kelsey Turner. We got a guy, I think, taking a deal, but not necessarily knowing anything to implicate Kelsey. And, he said, I don't know. Grace asked, what happened? I don't know. Who drove the car? I don't know.
Yeah, Vinny, I don't know. I don't know what is going on behind the scenes with prosecutors for them to cut a deal like this. I don't know if he pled guilty pursuant to Alford v. North Carolina, which the viewers should know the Supreme Court allows someone to plead guilty without necessarily admitting their guilt because that was what would be in their best interest. So I don't know if he's pleading guilty pursuant to Alford. Wasn't in the courtroom today. But it all sounds very confusing, especially when you consider his 2021 interview with Access Hollywood, where he said directly, we're not monsters. When I left, he was alive. We didn't do it. We wouldn't do anything like this. So I don't know. He's going to be such a bad witness because of everything, the interviews he's done with Access Hollywood, now with Court TV, because of, these things, this ripe information for cross-examination against him, and then obviously because it gives Kelsey Turner someone to point at and say, this is the individual who committed the crime. I did not do this. He did this. He acted on his own. I was terrified. So now she has, an even more viable defense, and the prosecutors just provided themselves with a really, really terrible witness.
Wow. All right. And let's take a listen to more of Grace's interview asking again about this plea agreement.
But the plea agreement says that you acknowledge having participated in the murder of Thomas Burchard. Are you telling me that that's not true?
That's what I have to do. Yeah, that's what it says on the plea agreement.
So what happened? What happened that night?
That's some stuff I can't talk about until after my case has been settled.
Okay.
Not until the 26th.
Did
stuff like that.
Did they ask that you testify against Kelsey?
No.
Will you testify against Kelsey?
No.
You won't testify against
She
Kelsey?
she wasn't involved. She had nothing to do with this.
So Diana Pena testified at the grand jury hearing that she, meaning Kelsey, was urging you to knock him out and calling you a B for not doing it or for doing it. So is that true?
I'm not allowed to talk about none of that stuff, right? Like I said, not certain stuff that corroborates like directly into the case and what's going on with that stuff. I can't talk about those questions until after I get sentenced.
And that's after the sentencing?
Yeah.
So why did you plead guilty, John?
Well, this is just taking too long to get done, and trial and everything is just keeps on getting pushed back. So I pretty much just wanted to. I don't want to sit here no more. I don't want to sit here locked up like this. I'd rather just get this over with. People, you know, I'm just tired of being locked up like 23 hours a day and 1 hour out. Like this, I've been like this the entire time I've been locked up. I've never been locked up like this.
I will note it's better than being bludgeoned to death and thrown in the back of a trunk of a car and left out in the desert. Okay, but okay, Ann, does it sound to you like he may be a witness for Kelsey Turner? Because right there, he just told Grace that she had nothing to do with it.
Well, I mean, it sure sounds like it. I mean, but it also sounds like he's holding his cards close to the vest, in a way, and you know, basically saying it could be for her, or maybe there's more that he has to say, but he can't talk about it right now under the agreement, and we'll hear about it later. I find him to be extremely confusing in terms of what he's saying here to Grace. And by the way, Grace is doing a wonderful job in asking him the probing kind of questions that should be asked of him.
Yeah, and wait till he's. I don't know who's going to cross-examine him, Sue, because I don't know who is going to call him as a witness. I mean, I thought it was he cut a deal, right? Because he's going to have an opportunity for parole. I think if with good behavior. He'll get out at some point. This was a brutal murder. Diana Pena is walking around free right now. All the cards seem to be pointing towards Kelsey Turner, but it doesn't look like he's going to provide the evidence against Kelsey Turner. Sue Ann, what is going on in Vegas?
There's two kinds of pleas. There's pleas you enter out of convenience for the defendant, like he was saying in his interview. It's more convenient. He wants to get out of the type of lockdown he is and just start his prison time straight up. And then there's pleas where the person, the witness, is actually cooperating. And so the issue is we can't tell based on his interview and what he said in the past if he's entering into a plea for convenience because he just wants to go ahead and go to prison and start his time and start being eligible for parole and start his gain time, which is always, if you think you're going to jail anyway, that's always something you're thinking about. Let me just start my time. Or whether or not this is a plea, that's a deal, like what you're saying, what Mike's talking about, that's subject to some sort of cooperation where he's actually going to offer the state something in their case. And based on what he's saying, it doesn't sound like he's going to offer the state very much at all that's going to help their case. So it might just be a plea of convenience for him to not to have to go to trial and just start his prison sentence.
Well, the bottom line is he said after his case, but before the trial. So we should find out a lot more at the end of July, and then mark it down, folks. November 7th, Nevada versus Kelsey Turner. I have no idea which way this one is going, especially here in 2022, which has turned into the year of the not guilty. I'm looking at this and saying, uh-oh, that could happen here under these circumstances as well. All right, Think Tank, Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Sue Ann Robinson staying with us the whole hour. When we come back, the new trial you're watching here on Court TV. Sean Pickett accused of murdering his mother and killing her dog. But the question I have tonight is, what exactly is his defense? Because he's had a couple different chances to tell his story, and they're all different. Which one is going to stick, and what did they say in opening statements? All of that next.
Comfort Technology.
I was hearing evil voices. I was hearing evil voices. This is a statement made by Sean Pickett after reporting to authorities the death of his mother and pit bull named Chico. Their bodies were found in their residence in Avoca, Wisconsin. It was Pickett who called them there in early May of 2021, the day after Mother's Day. When authorities arrived, Pickett's mother, Susan, was observed having bruising all over her head and face, while Chico had multiple wounds to the chest. Pickett, on the other hand, had dried blood on the front of his pants, tops of his tennis shoes, and front of his shirt. When questioned, Pickett initially pointed blame at his mother's boyfriend, saying this boyfriend held him hostage and left him to take the blame. Moments later, he walked this back.
Count 1 alleges first-degree intentional homicide in that it alleges that Mr. Pickett did cause the death of Susan D. Pickett with intent to kill that person, a Class A felony.
He said what really happened was he, quote, blacked out, thought he was, quote, possessed, and was, quote, hearing evil voices in his head. Quote, the evil in my head said I had to kill my mom and Chico in order to go to peace, in order to find rest. There was people inside my head saying that once I kill them, that I will go to rest. He admitted he believed he had killed his mother and dog with a, quote, metal bar and knife. My mom first, then Chico. I stabbed her and beat her with that metal bar. Pickett is charged with first-degree intentional homicide for the death of his mother and the mistreatment of animals for the cruel treatment of Chico, which resulted in his death. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of imprisonment for life.
The day after Mother's Day is when he called police. Mother's Day weekend. Unbelievable. Sean Pickett accused of murdering his mother. Some confusion, though, in some of the statements he's made and exactly what his defense is here at trial. There were some statements involving he was framed by mom's boyfriend, then there's the evil, possessed by evil, and then today we're hearing perhaps it's self-defense. Well, Court TV legal correspondent Joy Lim Nakrin is in Wisconsin and has a look at what happened here in day one.
An efficient day here at this Wisconsin courthouse, a jury seated, opening statements made, and the state has already called 2 witnesses to the stand. Now, the state promised a simple, straightforward case with opening statements lasting just around 10 minutes, and they quickly refuted the defense claim of self-defense.
What you won't hear from that taped interview is any indication that Susan was a frail 5'4", 84-pound woman, had physically attacked either Sean or his dog to provoke this deadly aggression against them. Nor will you see any significant injuries on Sean's body to indicate that he had himself been attacked or in any physical danger from Susan. To the contrary, I'll encourage you to listen to that video where Sean will tell you only that Susan and Mr. Wheeler had played mind games with him.
That self-defense claim came as a surprise to many trial observers after the defense withdrew its insanity plea. Now they argue Susan Pickett attacked her son, so he killed her.
Mr. Pickett acted in self-defense upon discovering his mother stabbing the dog, that when he confronted her with it, she turned upon him and was the object of her aggression. And you'll see it's a very small space. And you'll hear evidence that he had acted in self-defense upon this confrontation.
The state quickly presented evidence refuting that claim through its very first witness, Avoca Police Chief Dan Carey, who responded to the scene.
Did he claim that he was attacked by Chico?
No.
Did he claim that Susan had attacked the dog?
No.
Did Mr. Pickett complain of any injuries to his own body?
No.
Did you observe any fresh or significant injuries on Mr. Pickett's body?
No, I did not.
The jury saw gruesome images of the crime scene, including the victim's body, while hearing testimony from a state crime lab technician. He testified that his team collected weapons, including a knife, a machete, and a metal bar, which prosecutors say Sean Pickett used to kill his mother and family dog before then blaming it on his mother's boyfriend.
Agent Man Savage will describe how after calling the police to report his mother's death, Mr. Pickett initially claimed it was Mr. Wheeler and some of his buddies who had returned to the house over Mother's Day, over the weekend of Mother's Day, tied him up and murdered Susan and his dog, leaving Sean there to take the blame. However, you'll also learn that when faced with the reality that this elaborate story simply didn't add up, Mr. Pickett came clean and he told the officers the truth about what really happened.
Mr. Wheeler, the victim's boyfriend, is expected to take the stand, as is the defendant himself. Vinnie, back to you.
All right, Joy Lim Nakrin in Wisconsin tonight. Let's bring back in our think tank Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Sue Ann Robinson. Ann, I'm always skeptical when the defense evolves, right? I was framed. It was a frame job. Okay. Right. I was possessed by evil. I was possessed, and now all of a sudden it's self-defense at trial. What gives here?
Yeah, I'm with you, Vinny. I was thinking from the sublime to the ridiculous. If you don't believe that, they'll give you this. If you don't believe this, I'm going to give you that. And by the way, I was insane. It was self-defense. The dog bit me. My mom killed the dog. All of these things, all these different stories make him incredible. It's just incredible. It's an incredibly bizarre case to begin with. And so adding layers of more bizarre explanations and defenses is really makes this case and defense beyond belief.
Sue Ann, is there any reasonable explanation for 3 stories?
Well, there's a reasonable explanation for now why he's switching to self-defense. And you switch to self-defense sometimes if you can't get a doctor to say that your client has a mental health condition. If the defense cannot find a doctor that's going to say, hey, he's insane, he has an ongoing mental health condition that's been undiagnosed or has been diagnosed, he doesn't have a history of mental illness. If there's no doctor that's willing to testify to that or hasn't found that and evaluating him, now he can't go with that insanity defense. He can't go with that I blacked out defense and evil voices defense because there's no expert witness that's willing to go on the stand and say, yes, he has bipolar disorder, he has schizophrenia, he has any of those things. And so if there's no doctor, there's no expert witness, then he's got to use something else. And all he has there left in the bag is self-defense. The problem for him is that he killed his mom, he killed a dog, and he's a liar. So I'm willing to go into the crystal ball and say this is definitely going to be a guilty for 2022.
See, I won't do that, Michael Sterling, because we just covered a trial down in Florida where Mrs. Redlick had 3 different defenses. First, it was, my husband had a heart attack. Then it was, my husband stabbed himself. And then it was self-defense.
Self-defense.
And guess what the jury decided, Michael? That it was self-defense. Well, it's 2022, and that's. I'm not saying anything. I'm just going to report it. The jury's going to figure it out, I guess. But it's no longer.
You cannot kill your mom. That's a stretch. People are okay sometimes with husbands. They think maybe something went wrong, but your mom, the day after Mother's Day, and the dog, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, Vinny, I'm not laughing because it's not serious. Sometimes you laugh to keep from crying when you do the work we do every day. But I agree with you, Vinny. Not only did we see that happen in South Florida, we just saw it happen in South Georgia, where we had a confession that was recanted, and it was someone else did it, not me. So we've seen it happen twice this year already. Where there's been 2, stories have changed, evolved, defenses have changed, evolved, and we've seen not guilty verdicts. So the question really becomes, what evidence is there? What did this defense attorney see in the evidence, in the discovery package, and the information he received to say, this is the best chance we have, right? It's likely they weren't able to get a mental health expert or a court-appointed mental health expert to come in, evaluate him, and give him something for a mental defect disorder. I think Wisconsin recognizes 2 types: the impulse control, that have the ability to control my impulses and conform to the law, and then obviously the other test, which says I didn't know that what I was doing was wrong because of the mental defect or disease. But when the act is there, Vinny, your choices are limited, right? So when there's no doubt about the fact that you did the act, you have to turn to something else, right? Typically, you look at the actus reus, which is legal jargon for whether or not you had the guilty mind. And then if that's not there, then you look for something else. And maybe self-defense was the only thing left on the table. Because if nobody's there to refute your story, then you can get a little creative as a defense attorney. And in fact, you have an obligation to get creative on behalf of your clients. You have an ethical duty to do everything you can to create some reasonable doubt in the minds of jurors. And maybe the lawyer saw something there. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I don't think this is going to be a very long trial either way.
Yeah, call me crazy. I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like to have trials to figure out the truth, but.
So old-fashioned, Vinny.
Very old-fashioned. All right, when we come back, we're going to stay in Wisconsin because Wisconsin is the new Florida, folks. I've been saying it for months now. All these cases coming out of Wisconsin. Taylor Schabusiness, accused of some sort of kinky sex, drug-fueled game with a man, and then afterwards severs his head, leaves it in a bucket in his mom's basement. Those are the allegations. She was back in court. We'll tell you what happened when we come back.
At magicspoon.com.
I'm going to stick with the idea then of scheduling the matter for trial. Obviously, if you take a look at discovery, these dates are going to be problematic. You have to let the court know. But how about a trial starting on October 24? Mr. Jolly, does that work?
That works.
That should work for the state at this point.
Okay. And did you check? I know we need to make sure that these dates work with victims. Have you checked there as well?
I did. I believe those dates work for the crime victims as well.
Okay. So October 24, that's a Monday. That'll be our trial date.
You saw it very quickly. The defendant, Taylor Shabusiness, back in the courtroom, has a trial date October 24th. Probably a very appropriate time of year for this House of Horrors trial. I want to show you the victim. His name is Shad Therion, and a horrific death. Horrific death. Something happened. And what the allegation is that him and Taylor Shabusiness together in some sort of a drug-fueled sexcapade, and he ends up dead, dismembered. Here's more on the story, and I just call it House of Absolute Horrors.
Around 3:25 a.m. on February 23rd, police responded to a call from a woman saying she had found her son's severed head in a bucket in the basement of her Green Bay, Wisconsin home. Officers were dispatched to the home where they discovered the gruesome scene. A severed head in a bucket with a disembodied male organ and knives, blood on a nearby mattress, and other body parts, including a torso in bags. The last person to see the victim was 24-year-old Taylor Shabusiness. The criminal complaint states Shabusiness told police she and the victim were smoking methamphetamine, having sex involving strangulation in chains when she, quote, went crazy and choked him to death. Shabusiness told police she then performed sex acts on the body before dismembering it. The complaint says Shabusiness told police they were going to have fun trying to find all the organs. Taylor Shabusiness is now charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. She faces life in prison if convicted.
I told you, another case out in Wisconsin. Let's bring back in our think tank. Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Sue Ann Robinson with us. Sue Ann, this is horrible, this scene. I can't imagine. And the victim's mom had to find his head in the bucket. So what's the defense going to do here? Is this going to be self-defense again?
No, I think that she might go for not having mens rea if she's trying to insert the fact that she was on drugs at the time. Maybe she'll use some sort of defense where she wasn't in her right mind. She doesn't recall what happened. I think the issue is that with the sex acts and the story about the sex acts, she is present. She can recall what occurred. So it's going to be hard for her to use a drug-induced kind of incident and say the drugs caused her to not know what she was doing when she recalls exactly what she did.
Michael, this case extremely disturbing, but it looks like they're going to have to try this case, and it's coming up this fall. What are your thoughts about how this plays out?
Yeah, Vinny, this is one of those cases where, you know, defense lawyers, you basically only have two choices, right? You plead your client out to life without the possibility of parole when the death penalty isn't on it, or you try the case. So oftentimes you go ahead and just try the case because the only other option is life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. So you may as well, you know, try it and see if you can come up with something at trial to mitigate the damages here. You know, voluntary intoxication in Wisconsin is not an absolute defense, but there could be some mitigating factors there. So the drugs could play a role. I do think, based on her statements, you might lean towards something like that. It doesn't necessarily get you out of the responsibility for the homicide, but could potentially mitigate if you can get a lesser included in there. So that, I mean, and by lesser included, I mean something like manslaughter, something that allow that decreased your culpability in terms of what happened in this particular in that particular case. So, it won't get you out of the responsibility for the homicide, but could potentially mitigate it.
All right, Ann Bremner, I'm going to spare you having to talk about Taylorship business tonight.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you about Amber Heard, because apparently Amber Heard looking for a new trial because of something going on with one of the jurors. And I asked you on social media today, what if Amber Heard actually wins a new trial? What will the retrial of Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard be like? Your verdict next.
In civil case number CL 2019-2911, Mr. Depp's claim against Ms. Heard. 1. As to the statement appearing in the online op-ed entitled, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. In the Washington Post online edition, quote, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, end quote. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Shocking moment. Amber Heard losing the case against Johnny Depp, now looking for a new trial, wants that verdict set aside. Let me read for you from the papers that they submitted with the court. Interesting allegation here. The information on the jury panel list appears to be inconsistent with the identity and demographics of one of the jurors. Juror number 15 was apparently born in 1970, not 1945, as reported to and relied upon the parties, including Ms. Heard, in selecting a jury panel. Given the requirements for verification of each juror, it appears the identity of the juror was not verified. It is unclear if juror number 15 was in fact ever summoned for jury duty or qualified to serve on the panel. This warrants an investigation by this court to determine if the juror was in fact summoned and whether the due process rights of the parties were bypassed. Depending upon the results of the investigation, this may justify setting aside the verdict in its entirety and setting this matter for a new trial. So I asked you today, if there is a new trial, what would it be like? The retrial of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day, coming to us from Costa, who says, no different unless she doesn't testify, but to be honest, it's unlikely they will get a jury that has not witnessed her lies. Let's bring back in the think tank, Ann Bremner. What do you think a retrial would be like here? Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard 2, Hollywood, another sequel.
Everybody wants to watch it again. I thought Court TV was showing it again, Vinny, and people are tuning in, right? So I guess it would look the same. Are they going to do anything that's different? That was a national pastime, watching Court TV and watching that trial. So I don't see anything playing out differently. And frankly, Amber Heard started to do the talk show circuit, making the same claim she made to the jury that didn't sell. And she'll do the same thing if there's another trial. I would guarantee it.
Julie, tonight, her team was given the jurors information to check everything before trial. She's just mad she lost. Sue Ann Robinson, what are your thoughts about this alleged discrepancy in the age of juror number 15?
It would have to be something that would have affected the trial outcome. The lawyers are literally doing a Hail Mary based on their client's inability to just let it go. You lost, sis, it's over. Figure out how to settle the case monetarily and move on. And Ann is absolutely right. She's on the talk show circuit making the same claims, defaming claims that she got brought to court for, still saying it as if she just wants to keep it going. I almost feel like she feels like this is her only opportunity to continue with her celebrity and to be on TV if she has another trial. So she's like, well, let's do it then.
Terry, tonight, she should not testify if she gets a new trial. I think Johnny will agree to stop collection on the millions to which she will never afford in order to stay out of court. Depending on the jurors, you cannot be certain which way it will go with retrials. Michael Sterling, we have about 30 seconds here. What do you think the chances are of this juror being not who they said they were and we're getting a new trial here?
I think it's unlikely. I think it's more likely, and I think about the Scott Peterson case where you had answers on a questionnaire. I think it's more likely that it was simply a clerical error because the lawyers probably weren't asking what year were you born. They were just probably looking at the information, Vinny, and they saw that and, you know, made assumptions or generalizations, and it may have just been a simple clerical error where nobody's going to give themselves an extra 25 years. They're going to, most people are going to try to make themselves
shave it off, like on my Wikipedia right. page. You shave off the time, Michael. That's what you do. You shave it off. Hey, Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Sue Ann Robinson, great job tonight. Great to see y'all. We'll see you again really, really soon. When we come back, time for you to help us.
you for.
Before we go tonight, I have to show you a picture of a special girl who is missing tonight. Her name is Jadia Gaither. She may be in need of medical attention. Missing from Jamaica, New York since June 18th, just 11 years old. If you see Jadia, please pick up the phone, call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the NYPD. Let's get her back to safety. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for watching, and as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.